The heavy crown sat on Damian Blackwood's head like a burden he could never escape. Every morning he woke up feeling weaker than the day before. The curse that ran through his blood was killing him slowly, and there was nothing he could do about it. Damian stood at the tall windows of his castle, looking out at the northern territory that stretched for miles. His pack members went about their daily lives below, completely unaware that their king was dying. They saw him as the strongest alpha who had ever lived, but the truth was far different. 3 years ago, everything changed. It started with small things, feeling tired after council meetings, getting dizzy when he stood up too fast. Then came the real test. When Lady Catherine tried to kiss him at the Harvest Festival, something terrible happened. The moment her lips touched his, she screamed and fell to the ground. For days she lay in bed, barely breathing, as if something had drained the life right out of her. That's when the old healer told him the truth about his family's curse. Generations ago, a powerful witch named Morgana had placed a deadly spell on the Blackwood bloodline. Any romantic touch would steal the life force from both the alpha and whoever dared to love him. The curse was designed to ensure the Blackwood line would die alone and forgotten. Since that day, Damian had kept everyone at a distance. No hugs, no gentle touches, certainly no kisses. He ruled his kingdom from behind an invisible wall that no one could cross. His advisors kept pushing him to find a mate, to produce an heir. But how could he tell them that love itself was his death sentence? "Your Majesty," came a voice from behind him. Damian turned to see his beta, Lucas, standing in the doorway with a worried expression. "The council is waiting for you." Damian nodded and followed Lucas to the great hall. The same conversation happened every week. The council members, all older alphas with gray in their hair, sat around the long wooden table discussing the kingdom's future. They talked about trade, about border disputes, about everything except the elephant in the room. "My lord," said Elder Thomas, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "we must discuss the matter of your mate again. The pack needs to know their bloodline will continue." Damian gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that the wood creaked. "I've told you before, Thomas. I will choose my own time." "But sire," interrupted Elder William, "you're 28 years old. Most alphas have found their mates by now. The people are starting to talk. If only they knew the truth." Damian wanted nothing more than to find someone to share his life with, to have children, to build a future. But the curse made all of that impossible. Sometimes late at night he would lie in his empty bed and wonder if it would be better to just let the curse take him. At least then, his suffering would end. "The northern borders have been quiet," Lucas said, clearly trying to change the subject. He knew about the curse and he could see how these conversations tortured his king. "But there have been some interesting reports from the Forgotten Territories." Elder Thomas snorted. "Those wastelands? What could possibly be interesting about that place?" "There's talk of a healer," Lucas continued. "Someone with unusual abilities. Pack members who were near death have made complete recoveries after seeing this person." Damian's interest sparked for the first time in weeks. "What kind of healing?" "They say this healer can fix wounds that should have taken months to heal. Broken bones mend in days. Some even claim that people who were poisoned have been cured with just a touch." The Forgotten Territories were exactly what they sounded like. The lands that nobody wanted. After the Great War 20 years ago, the losing packs had been sent there to live in exile. It was harsh country with little water and poor soil. Most people who ended up there never came back. "Perhaps we should investigate," suggested Elder William. "If there really is someone with such power, they could be useful to the kingdom." Damian found himself nodding. "I'll go myself." The room fell silent. Kings didn't travel to the Forgotten Territories. It was beneath their station and potentially dangerous. "My lord," Thomas said carefully, "surely you could send someone else. A king has responsibilities here." But Damian was already making up his mind. For 3 years he had been trapped in his castle, slowly dying, unable to touch another person without causing harm. Maybe this mysterious healer could offer some kind of hope. Even if they couldn't break his curse, perhaps they could help him understand it better. "I'll travel in disguise," he said. "No one needs to know the king is coming." That night Damian packed light. He chose simple clothes, a brown leather jacket, dark pants, and sturdy boots. Nothing that would mark him as royalty. He looked at himself in the mirror and was surprised by what he saw. Without his crown and royal robes, he looked like any other alpha. Maybe a bit more tired than most, with dark circles under his green eyes, but ordinary enough. As he prepared to leave, Damien thought about the stories Lucas had shared. A healer who could cure anything with a touch. It sounded too good to be true, but what if it wasn't? What if there really was someone out there who could help him? The curse had stolen so much from him already. His youth, his energy, his hope for the future. It had turned him into a lonely king who couldn't even comfort his own people when they were hurting. He ruled through fear and distance because those were the only tools the curse had left him. But maybe, just maybe, this trip would change everything. The Forgotten Territories were a 3-day ride from the capital. Damien had never been there before, but he had heard the stories. Packs living in caves and makeshift shelters struggling to grow enough food to survive. Children who had never known anything but hardship. It wasn't the kind of place where you'd expect to find hope. Yet something about this mysterious healer called to him. Lucas had said that people traveled for days just to see them, even though the journey was dangerous. That kind of dedication meant something special was happening out there. As Damien rode out of the castle gates in the early morning darkness, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Not hope exactly, but curiosity. For the first time since the curse had revealed itself, he was actively seeking a solution instead of just waiting to die. The road ahead was long and uncertain. He didn't know if this healer was real or if they could help him even if they were, but he had to try. The alternative was spending the rest of his shortened life locked away from everyone he cared about, slowly wasting away until the curse finally claimed him. Behind him, the castle grew smaller in the distance. Ahead, the Forgotten Territories waited with their secrets, and somewhere out there a healer with mysterious powers was about to meet a cursed king who desperately needed saving. Neither of them knew that their meeting would change everything. 3 days of hard riding brought Damien to the edge of the Forgotten Territories. The landscape changed dramatically as he crossed the border. Green fields gave way to rocky ground and sparse trees. The air itself felt different here. Thinner, sadder somehow. The first settlement he came to was barely worth calling a town. A handful of wooden buildings clustered around a dried-up well with people who looked like they hadn't had a good meal in months. Damien kept his hood up and his head down as he asked for directions to the healer everyone was talking about. "You'll find her in Moonstone Valley," said an old man with scars across his face. "But don't expect miracles, stranger. She's just a girl who knows her herbs." Damien thanked him and continued riding. Moonstone Valley turned out to be a small community built into the side of a hill. Houses were carved directly into the rock, with gardens squeezed into every available space. Despite the harsh surroundings, there was something peaceful about the place. He tied his horse to a post near the main path and started asking around. People here seemed healthier than in the other settlements, and there was hope in their eyes that he hadn't seen elsewhere in the Forgotten Territories. "You're looking for Ilara," said a young mother carrying a baby. "She'll be in the healing gardens behind the big cave house. Can't miss it." The healing gardens were unlike anything Damien had ever seen. Rows of plants he didn't recognize grew in perfect order, their leaves shimmering with an almost magical quality. The air smelled of lavender and something else, something clean and fresh that made his chest feel lighter. That's when he saw her. Ilara was kneeling beside a man who was clearly in pain. His leg twisted at an unnatural angle. She had long, dark hair that caught the sunlight and the gentlest hands Damien had ever seen. As he watched, she placed her palms on the injured leg and closed her eyes. The man's screaming stopped immediately. Within minutes, he was sitting up. Moving his leg normally, tears of gratitude streaming down his face. Ilara helped him to his feet with a smile that seemed to light up the entire garden. "Remember to rest for the next few days," she told him in a voice like warm honey. "And eat plenty of the soup I gave your wife. Your body needs time to fully heal." Damien stood frozen at the garden's edge. He had just watched something impossible happen. Broken bones didn't heal in minutes. People didn't recover from serious injuries with just a touch, yet he had seen it with his own eyes. As the healed man walked away, Ilara noticed Damien watching. She turned toward him and their eyes met for the first time. Something electric passed between them, a connection that made his heart race and his skin tingle. For a moment, neither of them could speak. "Are you hurt?" she asked, walking closer. "You look tired." Damien realized he probably did look terrible. The 3-day ride combined with his ongoing battle with the curse had left him pale and shaky. But he couldn't tell her the truth about why he was there. "Just some road weariness," he said. "I heard there was a healer here who might be able to help." Ilara studied his face with concern. There was something different about this stranger, something that made her want to take care of him. She had felt drawn to people before, but never like this. It was as if her healing instincts were screaming at her that he needed help, even though she couldn't see any obvious injuries. "Come, sit down," she said, leading him to a wooden bench under a flowering tree. "What's your name?" "Damon," he said quickly, using the first fake name that came to mind. "And you're Alara?" She nodded. "Let me look at you properly." Before Damien could protest, she placed her hands on his arms. The moment her skin touched his, two things happened. First, he felt stronger than he had in months. The constant tiredness that had been weighing him down lifted, and energy flowed through his body like sunlight. Second, she gasped and pulled her hands back, staring at him with wide eyes. "What was that?" she whispered. Damien was just as confused as she was. According to everything he knew about his curse, her touch should have hurt both of them. Instead, he felt better than he had in years, and she seemed shocked but not harmed. "I don't know," he said honestly. "How did you do that thing with the man's leg?" Alara looked down at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I've always been good with healing. My grandmother taught me about herbs and remedies. But lately things have been different, stronger." She didn't tell him the whole truth. For the past few months, her healing had become something beyond normal medicine. She could feel people's pain as if it were her own, and somehow she could take it away. It scared her sometimes because she didn't understand where the power came from. "Can I ask you something?" Damien said. "Do you know anything about your family? Where you come from?" The question hit a nerve. Alara's face darkened and she stood up abruptly. "My family is dead. They died when I was 16 because of laws passed by the king, laws that said certain bloodlines were dangerous and needed to be controlled." Damien felt his heart sink. "What happened?" "We were Omega Guardians," she said bitterly. "An old bloodline that was supposed to protect against dark magic. But the current king decided we were a threat. My parents and my brothers were killed during a raid. I only survived because I was away gathering herbs." The guilt hit Damien like a physical blow. Those raids had happened during his first year as king, when he was young and trusted his advisors completely. He had been told that certain families were plotting against the crown, that they needed to be stopped before they could cause damage. No one had mentioned that they were actually protectors or that innocent people would die. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "That's terrible." Alara wiped away tears she didn't realize had fallen. "I've been hiding ever since, working as a servant pretending to be nobody special. But lately, with these healing powers getting stronger, I'm worried someone will notice." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Damien learned that she lived alone in a small cave house, that she grew her own food and made her own medicines. She had created a new life for herself in the Forgotten Territories, helping people who had nowhere else to turn. Alara found herself telling this stranger things she had never shared with anyone. There was something about him that made her feel safe, understood. When he looked at her, she didn't see pity or fear. She saw genuine interest and respect. As the sun began to set, trouble arrived in the form of 3 rogue wolves. They came crashing through the garden, snarling and aggressive, clearly looking for something. "Or someone. Where is she?" One of them growled, shifting into human form. "We know the Omega is here." Damien immediately stepped in front of Alara, his alpha instincts taking over. But he was still weak from the curse, and the rogues were fresh and strong. The fight was brutal and quick. Damien managed to take down one of them, but the other 2 overpowered him. He hit the ground hard, blood streaming from a deep cut on his shoulder. Alara knelt beside him, her hands already glowing with healing light. The moment she touched his wound, the bleeding stopped and the cut began to close. But more importantly, that surge of energy passed between them again, stronger this time. "We need to get you somewhere safe," she said. "Those rogues will be back with more friends." As she helped him to his feet, Damien realized that everything had changed. This woman wasn't just a healer. She was something special, something powerful. And somehow her touch was the first thing in 3 years that had made him feel alive again. He also realized that she was in danger, and it was partially his fault. The raids that had killed her family, the laws that had driven her into hiding, he had to find a way to make that right. But first, he had to figure out why her touch didn't trigger his curse, and why, for the first time since the curse had manifested, he actually felt hope for the future. Alara led Damien to her small cave house, constantly looking over her shoulder for more rogues. The space was simple but cozy, with dried herbs hanging from the ceiling and books stacked everywhere. She helped him sit on her only chair while she gathered supplies to clean his wounds properly. "Those weren't ordinary rogues," she said, mixing herbs into a healing paste. "They knew exactly what they were looking for. Someone told them I was here." Damien watched her work, amazed by how natural her healing abilities seemed. "Why would rogues be hunting for an Omega?" "Because Omega Guardians aren't supposed to exist anymore," she replied, carefully applying the paste to his shoulder. "After the king ordered our families destroyed, everyone assumed we were all gone. If word gets out that one survived—" She didn't finish the sentence, but Damien understood. His advisors had convinced him that the Omega Guardian bloodlines were dangerous, that they posed a threat to the stability of the kingdom. Now he was beginning to wonder if he had been lied to about many things. Over the next few days, Damien stayed in Moonstone Valley to recover. Officially, he was hiding from the rogues, but truthfully, he didn't want to leave Alara's side. Every moment spent with her made him feel more human, more alive. Her touch continued to strengthen him instead of draining his life force, and he couldn't understand why. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told him about her childhood, learning healing arts from her grandmother, and the happy life her family had lived before everything fell apart. He shared stories about traveling, about the different territories he had seen, carefully avoiding any mention of his real identity. "I've never met anyone like you," Alara said one evening as they sat outside her cave house watching the stars. "There's something different about you, Damon. Something special." Damien felt his heart clench with guilt. She was falling for a lie, for a version of himself that didn't really exist, but he was falling for her too, harder than he had ever fallen for anyone. Her laugh made his chest warm. Her smile could brighten his darkest moods, and when she touched him, he forgot all about curses and dying alone. "Alara," he said carefully, "what if someone you cared about had done terrible things? Things they thought were right at the time but turned out to be wrong?" She considered this seriously. "I think people can change, but they have to be willing to admit their mistakes and work to fix them. Actions matter more than words." It was the perfect opening to tell her the truth, but before Damien could find the courage, Lucas arrived with a small group of royal guards. "My lord," Lucas said, relief obvious in his voice. "We've been searching for you for days. The council is demanding your return." The words hit Alara like a physical blow. "My lord?" She looked from Lucas to Damien, seeing him clearly for the first time. The way he carried himself, the authority in his voice when he spoke to the guards, the fine quality of his simple clothes. Everything clicked into place with horrible clarity. "You're him," she whispered, backing away from him. "You're the king." Damien stood up slowly, his hands raised as if approaching a wounded animal. "Alara, let me explain." "Explain what?" Her voice was rising, pain and betrayal making her words sharp. "How you lied to me. How you've been pretending to be someone else while I told you my life story. How you're the same person who ordered my family's death." "I didn't know," Damien said desperately. "I was told they were plotting against the crown. I was young and I trusted my advisors. If I had known the truth, if you had known the truth, what? You would have found a nicer way to destroy us?" Tears were streaming down her face now. "Get out. Get out of my home and never come back. Please just listen to me. There's something happening between us, something important. I think you might be the key to breaking. I don't care about your problems," she shouted. "I don't care about your curse or whatever it is you think I can fix for you. You used me. You let me heal you. Let me care about you. All while knowing that you were the reason my family is dead." Lucas stepped forward uncomfortably. "My lord, we really do need to return. There are urgent matters requiring your attention." Damien wanted to stay, wanted to make her understand, but he could see that Alara was beyond listening. The trust they had built over the past few days was shattered, and he didn't know how to put it back together. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Whether you believe me or not, there's a connection between us. Something that could help both of us." "The only thing I want from you is distance," Alara replied coldly. "Go back to your castle and your crown and forget you ever met me." The ride back to the capital was the longest of Damien's life. With every mile that passed, he felt the curse reasserting its grip on him. The energy and strength that Alara's presence had given him drained away, leaving him weaker than before. By the time they reached the castle, he could barely stay upright in his saddle. "Send for the healer," Lucas told the guards as they helped Damien to his chambers, "and summon the council." His Majesty needs rest, but rest didn't come. For days, Damien lay in his bed, burning with fever and racked with pain. The curse seemed angry that he had found a way around it, even temporarily. His body was shutting down faster than ever before. Meanwhile, back in Moonstone Valley, Ilara was struggling with her own problems. The rogues had returned with reinforcements, and now they weren't being subtle about their search. They were questioning everyone, threatening families, making it clear that they wouldn't leave until they found what they were looking for. Worse, her healing powers were acting strangely. Instead of the controlled, gentle energy she was used to, they now came in wild bursts that were hard to manage. She accidentally healed a plant so completely that it grew 3 times its normal size. When she tried to help a child with a scraped knee, the healing energy was so intense that she had to pull away quickly to avoid overwhelming the boy. Something had changed during her time with the king, and she didn't understand what. Late one night, while hiding in the deepest part of her cave house, Ilara found her grandmother's old journal. She had never been able to read the ancient writing before, but now the symbols seemed to make sense. As she worked through the pages, a horrifying picture began to emerge. The Omega Guardians hadn't just been healers. They had been the natural counterbalance to cursed magic, the only force that could neutralize dark spells that targeted alpha bloodlines. Her grandmother's journal told of a great curse placed on the Northern Territory's royal family, and how only an Omega Guardian's freely given love could break it. The journal also explained why her powers had been growing stronger. She was coming into her full inheritance as the last of her bloodline, and being near a cursed alpha had awakened abilities that had been dormant since childhood. Ilara sat back, her mind reeling. Everything Damien had tried to tell her was true. There was a connection between them, a magical bond that went deeper than simple attraction. Her touch had been healing him not just physically but spiritually, working to unravel whatever curse plagued his bloodline. But the knowledge came too late. Even if she wanted to help him now, even if she could forgive him for the lies and the loss of her family, the rogues were closing in. They had found her location, and soon they would find her. As if summoned by her thoughts, the sound of breaking glass echoed through her home. The rogues had finally tracked her down, and this time they weren't taking any chances. Through her small window, she could see dozens of them surrounding her house, their eyes glowing with predatory hunger. "Come out, little Omega," one of them called. "We know you're in there. Make this easy on yourself." Ilara clutched her grandmother's journal to her chest, her mind racing. She could try to fight, but there were too many of them. She could try to run, but they would catch her easily. Or she could do something that would ensure the knowledge in this journal never fell into the wrong hands. As the rogues began breaking down her door, Ilara made her choice. She closed her eyes and reached deep into her Omega Guardian powers, not to heal this time, but to send a message, a psychic cry for help that would reach the one person who might be able to stop what was coming. The message traveled across the miles in an instant, hitting Damien like a lightning bolt as he lay dying in his castle bed. Her voice echoed in his mind, desperate and afraid. "They found me. The rogues found me. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry for everything." And then, nothing but silence. Damien sat up in bed, his curse-weakened body screaming in protest. But for the first time in days, his mind was crystal clear. Ilara was in danger, and it was his fault. The rogues were after her because of what she was, and what she was could save his kingdom. He had to choose. Stay safe in his castle and let the curse kill him slowly, or risk everything to save the woman who had rejected him, but who might be the key to saving them all. Damien barely had the strength to stand, but Ilara's desperate message echoing in his mind gave him purpose. He stumbled from his bed, calling for Lucas and the royal guard. The curse had weakened him terribly, but he couldn't let that stop him now. "My lord, you're in no condition to travel," Lucas protested as Damien struggled into his armor. "You can barely walk." "She's in danger because of me," Damien said through gritted teeth. "The rogues are after her, and I won't let them hurt her." What Damien didn't know was that the situation in Moonstone Valley was far worse than simple rogue attacks. The wolves that had been hunting Ilara weren't acting on their own. They were being controlled by someone with much darker intentions. Morgana Shadowthorn had been waiting for this moment for decades. The ancient witch had spent years in hiding, slowly building her power and searching for the last Omega Guardian. She knew that Alara's bloodline held the key to either breaking or amplifying the curse she had placed on the Blackwood family long ago. From her hidden cave deep in the Forbidden Mountains, Morgana watched through the eyes of her rogue servants as they surrounded Alara's home. The girl was even more powerful than Morgana had hoped. She could feel the raw, untrained energy radiating from the small cave house like heat from a fire. "Perfect," Morgana whispered, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "After all these years, I finally have everything I need." Back in Moonstone Valley, Alara found herself trapped with nowhere to run. The rogues had broken down her door and were slowly closing in, their movements coordinated in a way that didn't seem natural. Their eyes were glowing with an eerie green light that had nothing to do with normal wolf instincts. "Don't hurt her," commanded a voice that made Alara's blood run cold. "I need her alive and undamaged." The rogues parted and a figure stepped through them that made Alara's worst nightmares seem tame. Morgana Shadowthorn was tall and elegant, with silver hair that moved like it was underwater, and eyes that had seen too much darkness. She wore robes that seemed to be made of shadow itself, and power radiated from her like poison. "Hello, little guardian," Morgana said with a smile that held no warmth. "I've been looking for you for a very long time." "Who are you?" Alara asked, though part of her already knew. Her grandmother's journal had mentioned this witch, the one who had cursed the royal bloodline and sworn to destroy anyone who tried to break her magic. "I am the one who created the curse that's slowly killing your precious king," Morgana replied. "And you, my dear, are going to help me make it so much worse." Alara backed against the wall, her healing powers flaring instinctively. But this wasn't something she could heal. This was pure evil, older and stronger than anything she had ever encountered. "I won't help you," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Whatever you're planning, I won't be part of it." Morgana laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, but you will. You see, I've taken out a little insurance policy." With a wave of her hand, the witch showed Alara a vision in the air. It was the rest of Moonstone Valley's residents. Men, women, children, all the people Alara had come to love and protect. They were trapped in magical bonds, unconscious but clearly in pain. "One word from me and they all die," Morgana said casually, slowly and very painfully. "Or you can come with me willingly and I'll let them live." "Your choice." Alara felt her heart break. These people had given her a home when she had nowhere else to go. They had accepted her healing gifts without question and protected her from those who would do her harm. She couldn't let them suffer because of her. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "Your power, combined with my magic, can do something wonderful," Morgana explained, circling Alara like a predator. "The curse I placed on the Blackwood bloodline was designed to kill one Alpha King. But with your guardian abilities twisted to my will, I can expand it to affect every Alpha in every territory. Imagine it. A world where all the strong ones slowly waste away, leaving only the weak to be easily controlled." The plan was monstrous in its scope. Morgana wanted to use Alara's natural healing abilities as a weapon, turning them inside out to spread curse energy instead of healing energy. With every Alpha weakened or dead, the witch would be free to rule over a broken world. "I'll never help you do that," Alara said firmly. "We'll see," Morgana replied. "You might be surprised what you'll agree to when people you care about start dying." Before Alara could respond, the sound of approaching horses echoed through the valley. Morgana's expression shifted to one of pleased anticipation. "Right on schedule," she murmured. "Your king comes to rescue you just as I knew he would." "How touching." Damien arrived with 50 of his best warriors, but he could immediately tell something was wrong. The valley was too quiet, too still. No bird sang, no wind blew through the trees. It felt like the whole place was holding its breath. "Spread out," he ordered his men. "Search every building. Find the villagers." But as they began their search, Morgana's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, carried on unnatural wind. "Welcome, King Damien," she called. "I've been waiting so long to meet you properly." The witch materialized in the center of the village square, with Alara bound beside her in chains that glowed with dark magic. Even from a distance, Damien could see that Alara was unharmed but terrified. "Let her go," Damien demanded, dismounting from his horse despite his weakness. "Your quarrel is with me, not with her." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," Morgana replied. "She's the most important piece of this puzzle. Without her, my curse stays small and manageable. With her, I can reshape the world." Lucas moved to stand beside his king along with the other warriors. They formed a protective circle, but Damien could feel their fear. This wasn't an enemy they could fight with swords and strength. You see, dear king, your little Omega friend has the power to break curses, Morgana continued. But power like that can be redirected. Instead of healing one cursed alpha, she could curse every alpha in existence. All it takes is the right motivation. With another wave of her hand, the unconscious villagers appeared around the square, still trapped in their magical bonds. Men, women, and children that Alara had healed and protected, now hanging in the air like gruesome decorations. Choose carefully, Morgana said to Damien. Fight me and they all die. Surrender yourself and your kingdom to me, and I might let some of them live. Damien looked at Alara, seeing the anguish in her eyes. She was blaming herself for all of this, he could tell. She thought that her very existence had brought this evil down on innocent people. But as he stood there, dying from his curse and facing an enemy far more powerful than anything he had ever encountered, Damien realized something important. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't thinking about his own death. He was thinking about protecting the people he cared about. The curse had made him afraid to touch anyone, afraid to love anyone, afraid to truly live. But seeing Alara in danger, seeing the villagers who had welcomed him suffering because of his family's ancient enemy, he understood that some things were worth risking everything for. I have a counteroffer, Damien said, stepping forward. Face me in single combat. If you win, you get everything you want. If I win, you let everyone go and leave this territory forever. Morgana's laughter echoed off the mountains. You can barely stand, little king. Your curse has weakened you beyond hope. What makes you think you could possibly defeat me? Because I'm not fighting alone, Damien replied, looking directly at Alara. And because some bonds are stronger than any curse. For the first time since her capture, hope flickered in Alara's eyes. She didn't know how they could possibly win against such overwhelming dark magic, but she knew that they had to try. Too many innocent lives hung in the balance. Morgana seemed to consider the challenge, her ancient eyes calculating odds and possibilities. Finally, she smiled that cold, cruel smile again. Very well, she said. But when you lose, and you will lose, the girl watches everyone she cares about die before I put her to work. Some lessons are best learned through pain. As the witch began to gather her power for the coming battle, neither she nor Damien realized that Alara had been quietly working on the magical bonds that held her. Her grandmother's journal had taught her more than just the history of her bloodline. It had also taught her how to use her powers in ways she had never imagined. The battle for Moonstone Valley was about to begin, and the fate of every alpha in the world hung in the balance. The magical bonds around Alara's wrists were designed to suppress her Omega Guardian powers, but Morgana had made one crucial mistake. She had assumed that Alara was still the untrained girl who had been hiding in the Forgotten Territories. But days of being near Damien had awakened abilities that had been dormant since her family's death. While Morgana focused on gathering dark energy for her battle with Damien, Alara quietly worked to unravel the spell holding her. Her grandmother's journal had taught her that Omega Guardian magic was about balance and healing. But it had also mentioned something else, the ability to purify corrupted energy and turn it back on itself. Damien faced Morgana in the center of the village square, knowing he was outmatched but refusing to show fear. His royal guard wanted to help, but this was clearly a battle that would be decided by magic, not swords. All they could do was watch and hope their king had some kind of plan. Last chance to surrender? Morgana called out, dark energy swirling around her like a storm. I might even let you live long enough to see your precious kingdom fall. I've spent 3 years dying slowly because of your curse, Damien replied, drawing his sword even though he knew it would be useless against magic. If I'm going to die today, at least it will be fighting for something that matters. Morgana unleashed her first attack, a wave of pure darkness that should have knocked Damien unconscious instantly. But as the magic struck him, something unexpected happened. The curse energy that had been eating away at his strength suddenly flared up, and instead of being hurt by Morgana's attack, he absorbed it. Impossible, the witch hissed. The curse should make you weaker, not stronger. What Morgana didn't understand was that Alara's healing touch over the past few days had changed how the curse worked. Instead of just draining Damien's life force, it had begun converting that energy into something else, a kind of magical resistance that could actually feed on dark magic. But Damien couldn't maintain this for long. Each attack he absorbed was also speeding up the curse's effects on his body. He could feel his strength returning temporarily, but he knew it was burning through what little life he had left. Meanwhile, Elara had managed to weaken her bonds enough to start channeling her power. She couldn't break free completely, but she could send healing energy toward Damien, helping him stay on his feet as Morgana's attacks grew more vicious. The witch realized what was happening and snarled in fury. Clever little guardian, but two can play that game. Morgana turned her attention to the hanging villagers, sending bolts of pain magic toward them. Their screams echoed across the valley as the dark energy began slowly draining their life force. "Stop," Elara cried out. "They're innocent." "Then surrender," Morgana demanded. "Give me your power willingly and I'll end their suffering quickly." This was the moment Damien had been waiting for. While Morgana was distracted by tormenting the villagers, he charged forward with his sword. The blade couldn't hurt her directly, but it could disrupt her concentration. As she spun to face him, her magical control over the villagers weakened just enough. Elara felt the bonds around her wrists crack. With a surge of Omega Guardian power, she shattered them completely and immediately sent healing energy toward the suffering villagers. Their screams stopped as her magic counteracted Morgana's torture, but the effort left her drained and vulnerable. Morgana realized she was now fighting a two-front battle. The Cursed King was somehow absorbing her attacks, and the Omega Guardian was actively working against her magic. "Time to change tactics. You want to save everyone so badly?" Morgana laughed. "Let's see how you handle this." The witch raised her hands to the sky and began chanting in a language older than civilization. Dark clouds gathered overhead and the very air began to feel poisonous. This wasn't just an attack. It was a spell that would kill everything living in the valley within minutes. "She's poisoning the land itself," Lucas shouted to his men. "Everyone fall back!" But there was nowhere to run. The spell was expanding in all directions and anyone caught in it would die horribly. Damien looked at Elara, seeing the same desperate determination in her eyes that he felt in his own heart. "Together?" he asked. "Together," she replied. They reached for each other at the same time, their hands clasping in the center of the poisoned air. The moment their skin touched, everything changed. Instead of the gentle healing energy Elara had shared with him before, this was like touching lightning. Power flowed between them in both directions. His curse-changed energy mixing with her Omega Guardian abilities to create something entirely new. The combined force of their joined magic struck Morgana's death spell like a hammer blow, but instead of just stopping it, their united power began to purify it, turning the poisonous energy back into clean, life-giving force. Grass that had been withering began to grow green again. Trees that had been dying suddenly burst into bloom. Morgana staggered backward, shocked by what she was seeing. "This is impossible." "The curse should prevent any bonding. You shouldn't be able to touch each other without causing harm." "Your curse was designed to keep alphas isolated and weak," Elara said, her voice carrying new authority. "But you never understood what Omega Guardians really are. We don't just heal individuals. We heal the connections between people." The truth was becoming clear to all of them. Elara's power wasn't just about mending broken bones or curing diseases. Her bloodline existed to repair the spiritual bonds that held communities together, to strengthen the relationships that made packs more than just groups of individuals. Morgana's curse had tried to sever Damien's ability to connect with others, but Elara's guardian magic had been working to rebuild those connections from the moment they met. The curse was still there, but it was no longer controlling him. "It doesn't matter," Morgana snarled, gathering power for one final devastating attack. "I'll kill you both and take the Guardian's power from her corpse." This spell was different from the others, a concentrated blast of pure destruction that could level mountains. As it roared toward them, Damien and Elara instinctively moved closer together, their combined magic forming a shield of healing light. The two forces met with an explosion that shook the entire valley. For a moment, everything was white light and deafening noise. When the chaos cleared, Morgana was on her knees, her power broken and scattered. "How?" she whispered. "I've had centuries to perfect my magic. You're just a dying king and an untrained girl." "That's where you're wrong," Damien said, helping Elara to her feet. "I'm not dying anymore. And she's not untrained. She's discovering abilities your kind tried to wipe out because you feared them." The battle was won, but Morgana wasn't finished. As she struggled to stand, her expression shifted from defeat to calculating malice. "You think this is over?" She laughed bitterly. "This was just the beginning. You've revealed yourselves now, shown the world what you can do together. There are others who will come for that power, others who won't make the mistakes I made. Then we'll face them together," Elara said firmly, "just like we faced you." Morgana's form began to fade as her remaining magic carried her away. "Enjoy your victory, little guardians. It won't last long. The darkness I've awakened won't go back to sleep just because you defeated me." As the witch vanished, leaving only the echo of her threats behind, Damien and Elara found themselves alone in the center of the village square. The villagers were safe, his guards were unharmed, and the immediate danger was over. But they both knew that Morgana was right about one thing. This was just the beginning. The power they had discovered together was something that would attract attention from forces they couldn't even imagine yet. "What happens now?" Elara asked, suddenly uncertain. The adrenaline of battle was wearing off, and she was remembering all the reasons she had been angry with him before. "Now we figure out what we are to each other," Damien replied honestly, "and we prepare for whatever comes next." He was still the king who had unknowingly ordered her family's death. She was still the Omega Guardian who had every reason to hate him. But they had also just discovered that together, they were something more powerful than either could be alone. The question was whether that would be enough to overcome everything that stood between them. The journey back to the capital should have been a celebration. They had defeated Morgana, saved the villagers, and discovered a power that could change everything. But as they traveled, Damien's condition began to deteriorate rapidly. The magical energy he had absorbed during the battle was fading, and the curse was reasserting itself with a vengeance. It was as if his body was punishing him for daring to feel strong again. By the second day of travel, he could barely stay on his horse. "We need to stop," Lucas said quietly to Elara as Damien swayed dangerously in his saddle. "He's not going to make it much further." Elara rode closer to Damien, reaching out to touch his arm. The moment her skin met his, she gasped and pulled back. Where before her touch had brought him strength and healing, now she could feel the curse actively fighting against her power. It was like trying to heal someone while another force worked to keep them sick. "It's getting worse," she said, fear creeping into her voice. "The curse is stronger now, more aggressive. It's like it's angry that we found a way around it." They made camp early that day beside a clear stream. Damien collapsed the moment he dismounted, his breathing shallow and his skin pale. Elara knelt beside him, her hands hovering over his chest as she tried to understand what was happening. "The battle changed something," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. "When we joined our power together, it didn't just defeat Morgana. It awakened something else." Lucas brought her Damien's travel pack, which contained several old books about the royal bloodline. "Maybe these can help," he said. "The king has been researching his family's curse for years." As Elara read through the ancient texts by firelight, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The curse wasn't just designed to kill slowly. It was designed to prevent the formation of mate bonds. Every time someone from the Blackwood bloodline got close to finding true love, the curse would accelerate, ensuring they died before the bond could be completed. That's why he's getting worse, she realized. The curse can sense that we're becoming bonded. It's trying to kill him before we can complete the connection. But the books also revealed something else, something that made her blood run cold. There was a way to break the curse completely, but it required a sacrifice that seemed impossible to ask for. The Omega Guardian must willingly take the curse into herself. She read aloud. By accepting the dark magic through a completed mate bond, she can purify it from within, breaking it forever. But the process will... She stopped reading, unable to speak the words that came next. "Will what?" Lucas asked gently. "Will likely kill whoever attempts it." Elara finished in a whisper. The next morning, Damien was too weak to travel. His fever had spiked during the night, and he was drifting in and out of consciousness. Every breath seemed to be a struggle, and Elara could see that time was running out. She made a decision that terrified her but felt inevitable. Sending Lucas and the guards ahead to prepare the royal healers, she stayed behind with Damien in their small camp. If she was going to attempt the ritual to break his curse, it had to be done while he was still strong enough to survive the process. When Damien woke in the afternoon, he found Elara sitting beside him, her grandmother's journal open in her lap alongside the royal curse research. "You found something," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I found a way to break the curse," she replied, "but you're not going to like it." She explained what she had learned, about the mate bond ritual, about taking the curse into herself, about the very real possibility that attempting it would kill her. Damien tried to sit up, alarm giving him temporary strength. "No," he said firmly. "Absolutely not. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me." "It's not just for you," Alara argued. "Morgana was right about one thing. There are others out there who will try to use this curse for their own purposes. As long as it exists, it's a weapon that can be turned against any alpha bloodline. Breaking it doesn't just save you, it protects everyone." "I don't care about everyone else," Damien said desperately. "I care about you. Find another way." "There is no other way," she replied gently. "And we both know you're dying. If we don't try this, you'll be dead within days anyway." They spent the rest of the day arguing about it. Damien refused to consider letting her take such a risk, while Alara insisted it was the only solution that made sense. As night fell and his condition continued to worsen, they both knew that a decision would have to be made soon. "Tell me about the ritual," Damien said finally, too exhausted to keep fighting. Alara opened her grandmother's journal to the relevant page. "It requires a complete mate bond, not just emotional but spiritual and magical. The Omega Guardian channels the Alpha's curse energy through the bond and purifies it using her own life force. If it works, the curse is broken forever. If it doesn't, we both die," Damien finished. "That's right." They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the stream bubble nearby and watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Finally, Damien reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I've been alone for so long," he said quietly. "The curse made me afraid to get close to anyone, afraid to care about anything except my duty as king. But these past few weeks with you, I've remembered what it feels like to be alive." "Damien," Alara started. "Let me finish," he continued. "If we're going to do this, if we're going to risk everything on a chance to break this curse, then I want you to know something. I love you. Not because you might be able to save me, not because of your healing powers or your Omega bloodline. I love you because you're brave and kind and stubborn enough to argue with a king when you think he's wrong." Tears started flowing down Alara's cheeks. "I love you too," she whispered. "I tried not to. I tried to stay angry about my family and the lies and everything else. But I can't help it. You make me want to believe in happy endings again." The mate bond ritual couldn't be performed lightly. According to the ancient texts, it required perfect trust between the partners, complete honesty about their feelings, and a willingness to literally share their life force. There was no going back once it started. "Are you sure about this?" Damien asked as Alara began preparing the ritual circle according to her grandmother's instructions. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I'm also sure. We were brought together for a reason, Damien. Maybe this is what that reason was." As dawn approached, they began the ritual. Alara's grandmother's journal provided the words, but the power had to come from their own hearts. They knelt facing each other in the center of the circle, hands clasped, souls bared. "With this bond, I offer my strength to heal your darkness," Alara spoke the ancient words. "With this bond, I offer my heart to guard your light," Damien replied. The magic began immediately. Alara could feel the curse flowing from Damien into herself, dark and cold and hungry. Her Omega Guardian powers rose to meet it, trying to purify the evil magic, but the process was excruciating. It felt like being burned from the inside out. Damien could feel her pain through their growing bond, and it was worse than anything the curse had ever done to him. "Stop," he begged. "It's killing you. Don't—" "Let go," Alara gasped. "Almost there." The battle between curse and cure raged within her, threatening to tear her apart. But slowly, gradually, her healing light began to win. The dark magic was being transformed, purified, rendered harmless. The curse that had plagued the Blackwood bloodline for generations was finally being broken, but the cost was everything she had to give. The ritual lasted through the night, and when dawn broke, Alara collapsed in Damien's arms. She had succeeded in breaking the curse, but the effort had drained almost every bit of life force she possessed. Her breathing was shallow, her skin was cold, and her pulse was barely detectable. "Alara, stay with me," Damien pleaded, holding her close. For the first time in 3 years, he felt completely healthy. No weakness, no pain, no sense of impending death. The curse was truly broken, but the victory felt hollow when the woman he loved was paying the price. "Did it work?" she whispered. her voice so faint he had to lean down to hear her. "Yes," he said, tears streaming down his face. "The curse is gone." "You did it," she smiled weakly. "Good, that's good." Her eyes fluttered closed, and for a terrifying moment Damien thought he had lost her, but she was still breathing, still clinging to life by the thinnest of threads. He gathered her in his arms and began the desperate race back to the capital, praying that the royal healers could do something to save her. The journey that should have taken 2 days was completed in 1. Damien rode as if demons were chasing him, stopping only when his horse needed rest. Lucas and the royal guard met them at the castle gates, immediately rushing Alara to the healing chambers. "She's used up almost all her life force," the head healer told Damien after examining her. "I've never seen anything like it. It's as if she burned through decades of energy in a single night. Can you help her?" Damien asked desperately. The healer shook his head sadly. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. This is beyond anything we know how to treat. All we can do is make her comfortable." Damien refused to accept that answer. He spent the next 3 days at Alara's bedside, holding her hand and talking to her even though she couldn't respond. He told her about his plans for the kingdom, about the changes he wanted to make to honor her family's memory, about the future he hoped they could build together. But even as he spoke hopefully, he could see that she was fading. Each day she grew a little paler, a little weaker. The healers had done everything they could, but they all agreed that it was only a matter of time. On the 4th day, urgent news arrived that forced Damien to leave Alara's side. Morgana had returned, and this time she wasn't interested in subtle schemes or magical manipulation. She was attacking the kingdom directly, leading an army of corrupted creatures and dark magic users against the capital itself. "She's furious that we broke her curse," Lucas reported as they prepared the city's defenses. "The scouts say she's been gathering every evil thing she could find for hundreds of miles. This isn't just revenge, she wants to destroy everything." Damien looked back toward the healing chambers where Alara lay unconscious. Every instinct told him to stay with her, to be there when she woke up or when she... He couldn't finish that thought. "I have to go," he said finally. "The kingdom needs its king." The battle for the capital was unlike anything in the kingdom's history. Morgana's army wasn't just composed of rogues and mercenaries. She had twisted magic to create monsters that shouldn't exist. Shadow wolves that could pass through solid walls, corrupted trees that attacked with poisonous roots, and flying creatures that screamed with voices like breaking glass. Damien led the defense from the front lines, his newly restored strength allowing him to fight with a power he had never possessed before. Breaking the curse hadn't just healed him. It had awakened abilities that had been suppressed for generations. He could sense the presence of dark magic, could counter spells that should have been beyond an alpha's power to resist. But even with his enhanced abilities, the battle was going badly. Morgana's forces seemed endless, and her dark magic was corrupting the very ground they fought on. Buildings began to crack and crumble, plants withered and died, and the sky itself took on a sickly green tinge. "Fall back to the inner walls," Damien ordered as another wave of shadow creatures broke through their defenses. "We'll make our final stand at the castle." As his forces retreated in good order, Damien caught sight of Morgana herself, floating above the battlefield like a dark angel of destruction. She saw him looking and smiled with cold satisfaction. "Did you really think breaking one little curse would be enough?" Her voice echoed across the chaos. "I've had centuries to prepare backup plans, little king. If I can't have the Omega Guardian's power willingly, I'll take it from her corpse and use it to burn your kingdom to ash." The witch raised her hands, and dark energy began gathering around her like a storm. This wasn't just another attack. This was the kind of magic that could level entire cities. As the power built to devastating levels, Damien realized that there was nothing he could do to stop it. "No kiss can save me," he whispered, remembering the words he had spoken during his darkest moments with the curse, but now they meant something different. No single act of love could save him from watching his kingdom and his people be destroyed by an enemy too powerful to defeat. The dark energy reached its peak, and Morgana prepared to unleash destruction on everything Damien held dear. At that moment, when all hope seemed lost, something impossible happened. A brilliant light erupted from the direction of the castle, not the sickly green of corrupted magic, but the pure, clean radiance of Omega Guardian power. The light struck Morgana's gathered darkness like a sword, shattering it harmlessly. Damien spun around to see Alara standing in the castle courtyard, her hands glowing with healing energy. She was pale and shaky, clearly still recovering from the ritual, but her power was stronger than it had ever been. "You're supposed to be dying," Morgana shrieked, her carefully laid plans crumbling around her. "I was," Alara called back, her voice carrying clearly across the battlefield. "But someone reminded me that some things are worth fighting for." The truth was that Alara had awakened when she felt Damien's despair through their newly completed mate bond. The ritual that had nearly killed her had also connected them on a level deeper than either had imagined possible. His pain had called to her and she had answered with everything she had left. "Together?" Damien asked, running to her side. "Together," she replied, taking his hand. Just as before, their combined power was greater than the sum of its parts. But this time, there was no curse interfering with their connection. The full strength of an Omega Guardian bonded to a healthy Alpha created a force that Morgana had never anticipated. Their joined magic swept across the battlefield, not destroying Morgana's army but healing it. Corrupted creatures remembered what they had been before the witch's influence took hold. Shadow wolves became normal wolves and fled into the forest. Twisted trees straightened and bloomed with new life. Even some of the dark magic users threw down their weapons and surrendered, freed from spells they hadn't realized were controlling them. Morgana found herself standing alone on the battlefield. Her army transformed or scattered, her power broken by the very force she had tried to corrupt and control. "This isn't over," she snarled, gathering what remained of her magic for one final desperate attack. "If I can't rule this world, then no one will." But as she launched her last spell, a curse designed to poison the very air and water for generations, Damien and Alara were ready. Their combined power didn't just block the attack, it turned it back on itself, purifying it into a blessing that would protect the kingdom from dark magic for years to come. Morgana's own curse rebounded on her, and with a final scream of rage and disbelief, the ancient witch crumbled to dust that was scattered on the wind. The battle was over. But as Alara collapsed from the effort of using her still recovering power, Damien realized that their greatest challenges might still be ahead of them. The morning after Morgana's defeat, Alara woke up in the royal chambers feeling stronger than she had since the ritual. The mate bond between her and Damien had stabilized overnight, and instead of draining her remaining energy, it was actually helping her heal faster. Their connection worked both ways. His restored strength was feeding back to her while her Omega Guardian abilities were ensuring that both of them stayed healthy. "How do you feel?" Damien asked, sitting beside the bed with a breakfast tray. He had barely left her side since the battle ended. "Different," she said honestly. "Stronger, but also more connected. I can feel your emotions, your thoughts sometimes." "Is that normal for mate bonds?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I can feel you too. It's like having a part of my heart outside my body." They spent the morning talking about what came next. Morgana was gone. The curse was broken and the immediate threats to the kingdom were dealt with. But that left them facing a different kind of challenge, figuring out how to build a life together when they came from such different worlds. "The council wants to meet with you," Damien said carefully. "They know what you are now, what your bloodline represents. Some of them are concerned about the implications." Alara wasn't surprised. An Omega Guardian bonded to the king would fundamentally change the power structure of the kingdom. Her abilities could influence not just healing and magic, but the very relationships that held the social order together. "Are you worried about what they'll say?" she asked. "I'm worried about what I'll say to them if they try to disrespect you," Damien replied with a smile that held no humor. "You saved this kingdom, Alara. You saved me, you saved our people, and you destroyed an enemy that had been threatening us for generations. Anyone who has a problem with that can deal with me directly." The council meeting that afternoon was tense, but not in the way Alara had expected. Instead of hostility, she found curiosity in something that looked like hope. The older members had lived through decades of watching their kingdom struggle with the effects of the curse, seeing their king grow weaker and more isolated each year. "Lady Alara," Elder Thomas said formally, "we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But we must discuss the practical implications of your unique position." "What kind of implications?" she asked. "Your Omega Guardian bloodline was hunted to extinction for a reason," Elder William explained. "Not because you were dangerous, but because you were powerful in ways that threatened certain interests. There will be other kingdoms, other leaders who won't be happy to see that power restored. It was true. Word of Morgana's defeat and the return of an Omega Guardian was already spreading beyond their borders. Some neighboring territories were sending congratulations and requests for alliances. Others were making veiled threats and asking pointed questions about Ilara's abilities. We need to be prepared for political complications, Lucas added, and for the possibility that others might try to take what Morgana failed to steal. Over the following weeks, Damien and Ilara worked together to address these challenges. They established new laws protecting not just Omega Guardians, but all bloodlines that had been persecuted in the past. They created healing centers throughout the kingdom, where Ilara could train others to use their natural abilities more effectively. Most importantly, they began reaching out to other territories to build alliances based on mutual protection rather than fear. The changes weren't just political. The mate bond between them was having effects that neither had anticipated. Damien found that his leadership abilities were enhanced by his connection to Ilara's empathic powers. He could sense the true feelings of his advisors and subjects, making him a more effective ruler. Ilara discovered that being bonded to an alpha actually amplified her healing abilities rather than limiting them, allowing her to work on a scale she had never imagined possible. "I want to show you something," Damien said one evening, leading her to a balcony that overlooked the kingdom's main city. The view was spectacular, with lights twinkling in windows and people going about their evening routines in peace and safety. "It's beautiful," Ilara said, leaning against the railing. "It's ours," Damien replied. "Not just mine as king, but ours together. Every person down there, every family, every hope and dream, we're responsible for protecting all of it." The weight of that responsibility was enormous, but somehow it felt manageable when shared between them. The kingdom was stronger because of their bond, and they were stronger because of the kingdom. "There's something else I want to ask you," Damien continued, suddenly nervous in a way she had never seen before. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring that seemed to be made of crystallized light. "This belonged to my grandmother, the last queen before the curse made marriage impossible for our bloodline." Ilara stared at the ring, understanding what he was asking but hardly daring to believe it. "I know we're already bonded," he said, dropping to one knee. "I know the magic between us is deeper than any ceremony could make it. But I want the world to know that you're not just the Omega Guardian who saved us all. You're the woman I choose to spend my life with, to rule beside, to build a future with. Ilara Moonwhisper, will you marry me?" Through their bond, she could feel his love, his certainty, his hope for their shared future. There was no doubt in his heart, no fear about what marriage to her might mean for his kingdom. There was only love and the desire to make their partnership official in every way possible. "Yes," she said, laughing through happy tears. "Yes, of course, yes." The royal wedding 3 months later was unlike anything the kingdom had ever seen. Representatives came from territories across the continent, including many who had initially been suspicious of the Omega Guardian's return. The ceremony itself combined traditional royal protocols with ancient Omega Guardian rituals, creating something entirely new. But the most important moment wasn't the official exchange of vows. It was when Damien and Ilara shared their first kiss as married partners, and their combined power created a pulse of healing energy that rippled outward from the ceremony site. Every person present felt it, a moment of perfect peace, of hope, of connection to something larger than themselves. "With this kiss, I promise to stand beside you through every challenge," Damien said as their foreheads touched. "With this kiss, I promise to help you build a world worth protecting," Ilara replied. In the months and years that followed, their partnership became the foundation for a new kind of kingdom. They established schools for training healers, created trade agreements that benefited everyone involved, and built a network of alliances that made their territory one of the most stable and prosperous on the continent. The prophecies about Omega Guardians turned out to be true in ways no one had expected. Ilara's influence didn't just heal individuals. It helped heal the relationships between different groups, different territories, different ways of life. The kingdom became known as a place where differences were celebrated rather than feared, where everyone had the opportunity to develop their abilities regardless of their bloodline. Their love story became legend, but not in the way of fairy tales. It became a real example of what was possible when people chose love over fear, partnership over dominance, healing over harm. Children grew up hearing about the cursed king and the forgotten Omega who had saved each other in their world. Damien never again had to whisper, "No kiss can save me," in despair. Instead, every kiss shared with his mate was a reminder that love, freely given and courageously received, could save everything that mattered. Years passed, and their kingdom flourished in ways that previous generations could never have imagined. The healing centers established by Elara became models that other territories copied, creating a network of care that stretched across the continent. Trade routes that had been dangerous became safe passages protected by the combined influence of allied kingdoms. Children who might have grown up in fear and poverty instead had opportunities to learn and grow regardless of their bloodline or social status. Elara gave birth to their first child on a spring morning when the entire kingdom seemed to bloom at once. Prince Adrian inherited his father's strength and his mother's healing gifts, but, more importantly, he grew up in a world where such combinations were celebrated rather than feared. Princess Luna followed 2 years later, with her own unique blend of abilities that surprised even her parents. "They'll never have to choose between love and duty," Elara said one evening, as they watched their children play in the castle gardens. "They'll grow up knowing that the two can work together." "Just like we learned," Damien replied, wrapping his arms around his wife. "Though I have to admit, our way of figuring it out was a bit more dramatic than I'd recommend." They often received visitors from other kingdoms who wanted to understand how their partnership worked, how an Alpha and Omega could rule together as equals. The answer was always the same: through constant communication, mutual respect, and the willingness to support each other's strengths while covering for each other's weaknesses. The forgotten Omega Guardian bloodline was forgotten no more. Under Elara's guidance, other survivors came forward from hiding, ready to reclaim their heritage and their purpose. A new generation of Guardians was trained not just in healing,